pretty well. Chicago is essentially now the murder capital of the United States, and we might instantly get in our minds if we find out that this Joe Blow here from Chicago, from the Windy City, is from there, and he might be a thug or a murderer because you heard that gun crime is really popular in Chicago nowadays. That mentality I've met people like you, and I've sized you up, is essentially what Nathanael says. And he also says, isn't the Messiah really supposed to come from Nazareth? But he denounces all who are from there. It's evidence that there is a disdain from the people of the south of Israel and Judea against the people of the north, but the people of the north even themselves despise the people from that very city, Nazareth. When the Ephesians says that Jesus came from the lower parts of the earth, Nazareth is pretty much as low as you can get. And Philip, whether he intended it or not, did the very necessary thing to dispel any level of prejudice. Take a look. Verse 46, letter D. Philip saith unto him, come and see. What is it that helps us overcome our limited knowledge that bears witness in our prejudices? It's being informed of what is actually accurate and true. And Philip did, in letter D, Philip exhorts him. Take a look, Nathanael. Figure it out yourself. Come to that accurate understanding by taking a look at Jesus yourself. He doesn't present arguments, because if Nathanael's a lot like me, arguments don't always, I'll always try to find a way to argue against it. He simply says, let Jesus speak. This, by the way, is important for us as Christians. As we approach those who are skeptical about Jesus' deity, about his person, about his existence, the way in which a Christian should approach that type of skepticism is bring the very person of Jesus to bear on those very words and say, you be the judge. This is what Jesus says, you be the judge. Not only does Jesus speak to the objections against him, he will speak to the very soul of the individual who has something against him. And when this takes place, dear Christian, you've done your duty. Isn't that easy? Isn't that simple? It is not always our role to be the one who stands up and presents a debate. It is our role to simply point the people out to Jesus so that their prejudice might be overcome. It's simple. You don't need to be up on the latest scholarly ideas about Jesus. You don't need to be an expert on Middle Eastern or Israel archaeology. Our role as Christians is simply this: point them to Christ. Point them to Christ. And let him speak. Let him speak. Let's go to our third dialogue, and we're low on time, so we'll go through this quickly. Dialogue 3 is Nathanael and Jesus, verse 47. Jesus initiates this in letter A, verse 47. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, and saith of him, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. Well, we know one thing about Nathanael. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't pull any punches. What he says, what he believes is true, he speaks directly to it, and Jesus affirms that truth about him. Certainly, Jesus refers to Nathanael in the greatest of terms. Because, as you know, when Jesus speaks, he sums things up concisely and entirely accurately. This guy was indeed no hypocrite. He was a young man who valued genuineness and truth, and Jesus commends him for it. By contrast to the religious elite of that day, whom Jesus called time and time again hypocrites, many, many times. Just look at Matthew 23 and you'll find some scathing words. Because they were hypocritical. Jesus sought people whose hearts valued truth and genuineness above all things. And by the way, John 4:24, Jesus affirms that later on. God seeks those worshipers who will worship him in what? Spirit and what? Truth. Spirit and truth. Cultivating a love for truth causes your heart to be fertile ground for the work of Christ in your life. If you love the truth, dear ones, you'll hate lies. If you love the truth, folks, you'll hate those things that cause you to live contrary to it, because you know they cause you to be bound up in error. If you love the truth, you'll set your heart to be willing to submit to that truth when you hear it. If you love the truth, you'll hate lies because of the life bondage they put you and other people in. If you love the truth, you have a sanctifying passion in your very soul. And boy, are you blessed. Because if truth is cultivated in your heart to be loved above all other things, it works to sanctify you because you are a part connected with the Lord of truth. Do you really care about what's true today, folks? Or are you more interested in what makes you happy? Untruths can make you very happy, but they are bitter in the end. Untruths can cause you a great happiness, but in the end, they cause your life to be destroyed. Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says, if you found your lives on my very words, you will be like a wise man who built himself upon the rock. And when storms came, you survive. The love of truth pervades the entirety of a person, and that is why our Lord honors those who long for it. He calls him a true Israelite. And Paul said that not all those in Israel are truly of Israel. Romans 9, 6 through 8, because not all sought the truth. Notice he says that in his mouth is no guile. He was not a deceitful man. It's not just the mouth, but even in his very being. Notice he says that it is in him, in whom is no guile. What a commendation. Folks, if ever I approached Jesus, or if ever Jesus came to me and he said something like this, I think I'd fall on my face and weep. Because that's what I want to be. And I trust you would be that way as well. I would weep for joy because he would affirm me as being a truth lover, and that's what I want to be. But notice the response of a truth lover right here in letter B. Nathanael was bewildered. Nathanael saith unto him, whence knowest thou me? Wait a minute. How do you know me? If you love the truth, you hate lies like flattery. And it's Nathanael's first question because he's suspicious. And that's the knee-jerk response. But it is more than that. Nathanael stands as a bewildered young man because Jesus is indeed speaking to the very pulse of his heart and his conscience, his very soul. How did you know me? And I think if Jesus would divulge more, he would say, I've known you before you were even born. And I've set my affection on you. John presents Jesus in such a soul-searching way that causes those who spoke to him to really be awestruck. Letter C, Jesus answers in verse 48. Jesus answered and said unto him, before that Philip called thee, when thou wast under the fig tree, I saw thee. We're out of time to talk about this, but whatever was happening under the fig tree was a private occurrence. A fig tree would provide a lovely shade on a hot day for somebody to reflect on the Scriptures and pray. It's difficult to nail down exactly what was going on. Some would say that this was his private devotional spot. Others would say that he's revealing an account in which Nathanael had an opportunity to lie to somebody, but he decided not to. It's difficult to nail down because it was private, but whatever it was, it spurred on Nathanael in letter D in verse 49. Nathanael answered and saith unto him in verse 49, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. Folks, you're not always wrong when you're quick to judge. Because right here, Nathanael, who is Mr. Quick to Judge himself, made the right call. He assessed Jesus by what his content of his words was, not by the region of which he lived. A truth seeker has found the source of truth. But there's more than that. Verses 50 through 51. Jesus answered and said unto him, because I said unto thee, I see thee under the fig tree, believest thou? Thou shalt see greater things than these. And he saith unto him, verily, verily, I say unto you, hereafter ye shall see heaven opened, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Again, we're out of time, but essentially, Jesus tells him, you are quick to believe, but you haven't seen anything yet.